residential sales 2025. So a quick update, hopefully mostly positive in terms of what we'll be discussing this evening. Not a motivational class, but we'll do a quick quote before we start. Clarity and simplicity are the antidotes to complexity and uncertainty. There's loads of complexity out there, there's loads of uncertainty out there. Part of this evening, let's focus on providing a bit of clarity and simplicity to all this, okay? So that's a good start, I think. This is simple enough. According to our friends at Rightmove, sales agreed in the last 12 months are 8% up year on year. Okay? So, in addition to that, available listings, there are 10% more properties on the market in the UK, according to Rightmove, than there were this time last year. So these are all kind of positive indicators. Okay? So, interestingly though, this is some more data we were given from Rightmove recently. Now this is a bit niche, probably a bit more relevant to estate agency rather than landlords, but I think it does have a bit of context. So this is the number of secondary instructions are at a record high. So what's a secondary instruction? Basically means someone changing agents. So what you can see along the top here, for those with good eyesight, you can see a yellow line along the top. Now this yellow line along the top is the 2019 or kind of pre-COVID level of second-hand instructions, or in other words, people changing agent, and what kind of frequency people changed agents. We can see along here, we're in 2020, COVID hits, government starts piling money into the economy, this number dips massively, okay? The market totally changes, and as agents, basically we become order takers. Agreeing a sale was the easiest thing in the world in around about January, March of 2022, okay? Andrew would agree, stroke disagree with part of that. Agreeing the sale, fine. Getting the thing through, well, good luck with that, okay? So is that fair, Andrew?
Yeah,
so,
stamp duty, Mike.
Yeah, exactly, all of these good things, okay? So during that period in 2022, agreeing sales, order takers, relatively simple. People weren't changing agents. They didn't need to because the house had already sold subject to contract. Then we can see this thin green line in here, and for those again with good eyesight, this is the Liz Truss mini budget, for those people who remember that, okay? And all of a sudden, things changed, because there's a lot of uncertainty, there wasn't a lot of clarity, and all of a sudden this spike goes up. And the market's been moving back to more kind of normal levels up to this date. Whereas interestingly, as you can see, all of a sudden, we've suddenly gone above this yellow line here. And I'm here to say, I don't think that's a bad thing. I just think that means you need to treat the market with a little bit of respect. You can't just chuck it online and wait for the offers to come in. Actually, for those people who consider themselves good agents, I think it's a good and a fair market, and I don't think that's a bad thing, okay? So I think that's a net positive, but a bit niche perhaps, but there we go. So next slide, let's get to some fundamentals. UK interest rates, they're at 4%. Obviously, you know, COVID, government starts chucking money in, fantastic, the money supply goes up by 20%, but the problem is you get inflation with that, don't you? How do you combat inflation? Well, you do interest rates. So the interest rates have to go up in order to get the money supply back down. So as we can see over the last few months, few quarters, 12 months or so, we're down to about 4%. And I wouldn't say inflation's under control, but it's not what it's, the government's kind of, you know, it's okay, isn't it? It's not in the news all day, every day. So interest rates staying at 4%, with your investor's hat on, I think we can start to plan that, you know, with some kind of level of confidence that around about that 4% mark is probably where we're going to be, okay? And, you know, for those people in the room, I'm sure we can remember much higher rates than that, and it probably wasn't that long ago, we remember lower rates than that, but I think 4% is probably fair, so that's not really too much of a concern. Key thing in the UK economy as a whole is growth. There's a lot of talk about growth, isn't there? So, in the last 12 months, the UK economy as a whole has grown by 1.1% in the last 12 months. So, you okay? Perfect. So yeah, 0%, 0.1%, 0.7%, 0.3%. So, these quarters here, we're talking about recession potentially, but as far as at the moment is concerned, there is growth. Okay? It's not particularly exciting growth, but it is there, and that is a net positive. A little bit beige perhaps, but 1.1 is better than nothing, isn't it? We compare that with UK house prices, okay? So average house price in the UK, £296,000 according to Halifax. No change, and a quarterly change, it's barely changed at all. But as far as from an annual point of view, house prices have grown by 2.5% year on year. Okay, so well, what does that mean? If the annual change is up by 2.5%, well, it depends if you're buying or selling, doesn't it, really? If you're selling, well, that means growth, doesn't it? Because we're invested wisely and we've got a return on our investment. Whereas if we're purchasing, oh, that's inflation, isn't it? Price has gone up, okay? But the point I'm making is, with the economy being at 1.1% and the UK property market being such a core part of our wealth and the country's economy, when we're double what the growth rate is in the UK at the minute as far as house prices are concerned, the government are going to need to look after this, because the growth isn't really coming from many other places, is it? Okay, so the housing market, the government's perfectly capable of making a mess of things, because we've seen it before, but with whatever's coming up in the future budgets, they need to be careful and they need to do the right thing, because the fundamentals I'm about to show you with the UK housing market, they're very good. So let's move on a little bit. Housing targets. The government have said we're going to build 1.5 million properties in the next 5 years. I'm sure you've seen this slide before. The red line along the top is what you would need is 300,000 houses. The blue skyline you can see before, over the last kind of 20 or 30 years, is how many houses have actually been built in this country. We have never built 300,000 houses in this country since forever. You know, certainly not as far as this, certainly not since 1992 anyway. Okay? So the government is saying they need to build 1.5 million. I don't see where it's coming from. So the supply side of houses is constrained. And when Dawn says things like the rental price in Kidderminster have gone up by 11%, well, you can see why, isn't it? Because there isn't the supply of houses. So whilst that is a social issue, being very selfish about where we are in the room as investors, the supply of houses being constrained isn't the end of the world. Okay, so so housing targets, supply side is constrained. Then where do we put demand? So this is UK population growth. According to Financial Times, Office for National Statistics, they reckon the UK population is going to grow by 5 million people over the next decade. So 5 million people are going to be, of growth, but where are the houses going to come from? Okay, well, answers on a postcard, please. But sorry for the economics lesson, but it's real simple supply and demand, isn't it? Okay, the supply side is constrained. If the quantity of houses we've got here and the demand is there, then that's going to be the price. Okay. Whereas if the supply is constrained because we just can't build enough houses for 1,000,001 reasons, and the demand grows, then the price is going to go up. So for those people who are in investment class and investing in property, well, I think the prices are going to be strong because the fundamentals underpinning it are just there. It's highly unlikely to be anything else. So that's where there's a lot of cheap headlines out there about house prices, all this kind of good stuff, but the reality is the fundamentals underpinning the UK housing market is, well, it's only going one way, guys. Okay, and I'll happily take a bet against anyone that's going to do anything else. Probably the most interesting slide that probably affects everyone here, regardless of your industry, is the UK age structure. Okay, it's a bit niche, we're going slightly off housing now, but it's still relevant. Okay, your demographics are your destiny. Okay, so we have ladies here on the left, we have gentlemen here on the right, newborns, people up to 100 years of age. Okay, so what we can see from a labour force point of view, this is probably one of the most populous parts of the UK population, 55, 60 something. So the demographic of people who are entering retirement, beginning to leave the workforce, are significantly higher number than the 15 to 20-year-olds who are going to be entering the market. So who's going to build these houses? I don't know, but we do need them. Okay. So and this will affect whatever industry you're in my book. So we've got a big challenge here. These are challenges which the government are going to have to face with, good policy, good planning, all this kind of good stuff, none of which I can control, none of which anyone in this room can control particularly, but there are things we can control, certainly with my Nock Deighton hat on. So if we have got a shortage of labour force, well, we're going to have a challenge really. Well, how do we do the work? And B, where do we get the best people from? Okay, so first of all, with my Nock Deighton hat on, slight sales pitch here, we're investing massively in technology. We're in the process of shifting CRMs. I'm sure you've all heard of ChatGPT, AI, all that kind of good stuff. There's a lot of that we're using at the moment. Increasing our communication, investment in WhatsApp for business, loads of important tools we're doing to enable us to buck the trend of whatever's going on in the UK housing market. Slight plug, here's a photograph of myself. As you can see, I'm taller in real life next to my business partner Leon. Leon runs a technology business over in Telford. Leon's built Nock Deighton's website for the last 15 or 20 years. And Leon and I have set up a business where using Nock Deighton basically as a test bed, we're able to build technology for estate agents, and we're able to sandbox it, roll it out within Nock Deighton. So for a firm that's 200 years old, we've got cutting edge technology. The firm's agent response, it works within sales, lettings, all of our business actually, and there's loads of cool stuff we've got coming on the horizon. But just to give you a context, agent response dealt with about 2 million rental inquiries last year across the UK. So the demand is there, I assure you. So anyway, so with my Nock Deighton hat, we're investing massively in technology because there is that shortfall. But again, perhaps a slightly appropriate quote given the nature of the audience, from Charlie Munger, legendary investor, business partner of Warren Buffett, for those who know, and he said this, he said, getting the right people into your system is the most important thing you can do, okay? So he talks a lot about compounding and all that kind of good stuff, but it's all about the people. So I think as far as this evening is concerned, I'd like to say a massive thank you to Dawn, I'd like to say a massive thank you to everyone at Nock Deighton, I'd like to say a massive thank you to everyone for coming, because actually, although we talk about technology and houses and all this kind of good stuff, it is a people business, and the people are absolutely crucial. So, and all the people at Nock Deighton, they actually make my life a lot easier rather than making it harder. So for that, I will always be very grateful. So thank you. And I think that also echoes in terms of, I suppose, segues quite nicely through to the speakers we've got coming up, in as much as getting the right people in order to give you the good advice, to be able to turn that kind of complexity and give you that clarity in whatever's coming on ahead as far as the UK rental market, investment, all that kind of good stuff will be the agenda for this evening. So on that note, I hope I've kept it quite quick, quite short, reasonably optimistic, and thank you very much, Dawn, and I'll let you get on with your evening. Thank you.